Let me see. It takes a little bit of time to set up. All right, Irene, I think we're live. It's
Well,
always,
wow,
it's
that's good
always a,
sense.
yeah, so it's always a little bit of a guessing game for me. I'm like, wait, are we live? Are we really live? But I think we are going live. So thank you everyone for tuning in to the sixth monthly Color Bowl Spotlight, and welcome Irene to this spotlight in March of 2021. I'm going to introduce Irene here in one moment. My name is Mia, and I work for UW-Madison Division of Extension for Outagamie and Winnebago counties. I focus on economic development, and I support entrepreneurs of color in this area, and particularly work very closely with Color Bowl Business Association. So the monthly Color Bowl Spotlight features Color Bowl business owners sharing their business stories, strategies, tips, and tricks. It is an interactive experience, so please use the comment box to ask questions throughout our little talk here. We'll go till about 1:30. And here, next here, I'm going to introduce Irene. Irene Strohbeen is an innovation management and new product development expert with over 25 years of research and development leadership experience at Kimberly-Clark Corporation in Neenah. But she's currently an independent consultant and solopreneur focusing on coaching and mentoring individual inventors who wants to become entrepreneurs. Irene also supports efforts to grow the entrepreneurial community in Northeast Wisconsin, supporting regional and city-based task groups. Additionally, as we know, most of our entrepreneurs are wearing a lot of hats and they're very community oriented. So that is true for Irene as well. She's volunteering a lot in the community through several board engagements, such as the Color Bowl Core Committee, and organizations who are applying her leadership to help make life better for others. And also quite recently, she was an appointee as a council member for the Governor Evers Council on Financial Literacy and Capability. Anyways, Irene, I know I could have mentioned a lot more. I know you're wearing probably 10 more hats, but do you want to add anything to that introduction, and how are you doing today?
Well, I don't need to add anything to the introduction, but I do just want to welcome my friends and friends I haven't met who are listening in today. And Mia, thank you in particular for inviting me in today, just to chat, just between us friends.
That's right. That's right. We're trying to keep our nerves all chill. So we're just thinking it's just a conversation, right? We're not, broadcasting this to the world. Well, we kind of are, but this is a really exciting opportunity. And Irene is a wealth of knowledge and she's a very generous human being. So I'm just super excited to talk to you today, Irene. As stated in the introduction, you do wear a lot of hats, but I just wanted to zoom in on your business today, how it got started, your vision for the future, words of advice. So first off, could you tell us some about your business and how it got started?
Well, I'll start with the beginning. As you mentioned in my bio, I had quite a few years working in Kimberly-Clark on the management ladder. When I left Kimberly-Clark over 12 years ago, if you think back to that time, that was during the Great Recession.
Right.
And so it was really almost impossible for me to find another position. I was too young to take retirement. And so I needed to have another source of income. So at that time, it made the most sense for me to set up shop myself. I had skills, I had knowledge. What can I do on my own as a consultant? And believe it or not, it took me probably over a year to figure out what I could consult in. I had spent so many years in the management ladder. I thought, well, I am no longer a scientist or a capable product developer. So I maybe I should be a management consultant. Where I landed was kind of somewhere in that midst. So my first few clients were local corporations. So my very first corporate client was Miller Electric. And, you know, at that time, I was uncertain about whether someone would hire me. I wasn't sure what they would hire me to do. But I really did have a lot of knowledge in product development and innovation. And so their VP of innovation hired me to be his innovation coach. And it was a real shot in the arm to really realize, hey, people will actually hire me, just me, you know, not because they have to, not because of any other reason other than they're getting some value from having me provide their services. So that contract actually, you know, turned into something larger than just being a coach for their executive, but it was a great way to get established.
That's really interesting. I mean, it's almost like you figured out your niche with your clients that initial year.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you probably would guess, I did have a lot of other things going on at the time.
Sure.
So I think I think I mentioned to you, Mia, that I had experience teaching. So while I was ramping up my business, I was teaching new product management as an adjunct professor for Milwaukee School of Engineering. And by teaching their core course in new product management, I gained a lot more book knowledge to fill in the gaps among what I had learned at Kimberly-Clark as a practitioner and as a manager of practitioners. So I really did, you know, kind of become an expert in that field, and I became much more comfortable thinking, yeah, I can be a product developer, I can be a contract product developer, I can be a consultant to product developers and inventors, and I can consult with executives and managers who are trying to figure their strategies for future products.
That's really fascinating. So during this first phase of your startup, did you feel supported? Did you get any kind of business support, either from family, friends, from any formal networks, any chambers, any groups?
Yes and no. So no, I did not get any formal kind of support. I did have a close friend who had been a consultant in the past. And so I used her as a mentor. She provided some books.
Sure.
You know, we talked through, I got her support and advice on how to get started, and, you know, even just converging on the field. But in terms of any formal support, like from the chamber or, you know, like from family, that didn't happen. I do need to mention that when I started, I kept my overhead really low. And even now, you know, there's no reason for me to rent out office space somewhere else. To me, that was just a drain on the finances. So I have an office in our home, and, you know, I don't have a lot of expenses that I have to deal with. So that's a huge help.
And I can only imagine that was helpful to not have that overhead when the pandemic hit. Is that a reflection you've had this year, that, you know, with your how you set up your business may have been easier for you to maintain your clients and your whatever you're, you know, all the things that you're doing because of how flexible you're set up?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, Zoom has its pluses and minuses, right? It's great. I've been able to keep in touch with clients and colleagues, you know, through this platform. It's harder to work on tangible products this way. It's harder to at least for me, it's harder to connect, form a true connection with someone I've never met in person. But I have a growing list of people that I hope to meet someday. Because it's been over a year now.
And you're a highly networked individual, Irene. So along these lines of growing your network and partnerships, Kimyat is asking, how did you put yourself in front of Miller Electric for them to contract you?
Hello, Kimyata. Thank you for that question. That's a wonderful question. So along with low overhead at the very beginning, I was not willing to pay money for print ads or any kind of significant advertising. All of my major contracts I got in the first few years, or probably ever, were all through word of mouth and networking. So the way I got my Miller Electric contract, and again, such a wonderful question, Kimyata, was I met one of the executives at Miller Electric because I attended a free class in the evening that UW Oshkosh had offered, their business school, on, if I remember right, it was something around new product strategies, something like that. And this executive asked a question that the speaker could not answer. Now, it was so long ago, I'm not sure I can remember the question, but I knew how to answer it and the speaker did not. So I talked to the executive during the break. Luckily, there was, that Q&A period led up to a break period before the last segment of the speaker's talk. So I talked to the executive. I said, if the speaker's not able to answer your question, because the speaker put it off and said, I'll get to that next section, which didn't happen. So I said, if the speaker doesn't get to it, let's you and I talk afterwards, because I might be able to help you. And that executive, it turns out, was not the one that I coached, but he passed my information on to the second executive. And that's how I got into the door at Miller Electric. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that turned into a larger contract, which ended up meeting the needs of that first executive.
Huh. What a fascinating story.
It was a great experience. Again, for my very first contract and very first venture into essentially earning money based on my own merits. There is a huge amount of complacency that we have when we work for an employer, because the money just keeps coming regardless of whether we have impact, at least jobs that I had. And
I think many of us can relate.
and so it was really gratifying to get that first check of, I think it was like $200, but hey, I earned it. I earned every penny.
Yeah. So Kimyat is just kind of following up for you to maybe confirm. So continuing education is important to continue to set a business owner apart.
Well, I think it might depend on what the business is. A lot of business owners, base their businesses on the talents they have, but absolutely in this consulting field that I have, so I have to fill in a gap of my story. So when I was teaching at MSOE, as I mentioned, I gained a lot of book smarts about my field. And so towards after about 2 or 3 years of that, I studied and I tested to be certified as a new product management professional. I had known about that certification. It is through a specialized professional organization for product developers. And I worked hard and I got my certification. And then you have to recertify every 3 years by, fulfilling various requirements. And so I recertified after 3 years and I let it go after the second 3-year period because I had not fulfilled their requirements. But the other reason why I let it go is because I learned from dealing with my clients that this was such a specialized certification that nobody knew what it was. You know, I could put the letters behind my name on my signature line, on my business cards and so on, and I was proud to do so, but it was meaningless. So if I was paying, you know, I would have had to paid, I think it was over $3,000 to fulfill the various credits I needed to be recertified. And then I had an additional amount of money I'd have to pay just for the certification. So I had to weigh, was it worth that money compared to, you know, the benefit I was getting? And it was more of a personal, you know, satisfaction as opposed to helping me gain clients. So that's part of the reason I let it go too.
Well, that's an interesting thing with like getting certification. It kind of requires your clients to have awareness of what that means if they require it. But if they don't, then, you know, maybe it's not something to go for. I guess it really depends, like you're saying.
Yeah, great point, because obviously a CPA needs to be recertified.
Right.
You know, everybody knows what a CPA is, and I don't know how you get around if you're not a certified public accountant.
Right. And Kimyetta, I will get to your question very soon here. Kimyetta always has a lot of really good questions. I just want to keep moving on the other questions here too. We were talking about support, Irene, and being a business owner of color in a predominantly white community, have you felt supported and welcomed in your business or in your interactions?
Oh, well, you know, I would just have to say yes and no. I always felt, and it's hard to separate being a woman of color, you know, being female versus being of color, right? So I only know my own experiences. Absolutely. I will have to say that in a typical networking event, it is hard for me to break into the white male spaces. And I don't know how much of it is me and my obstacles versus, you know, them not being welcoming. But on the other hand, you know, I've been able to be successful because of my network. So, you know, if you think about that situation I just described where I met the executive at Miller Electric, that was a smaller setting. It wasn't set up for networking. I was able to target that executive during the break because he had asked that question.
Sure.
But, you know, in a typical networking event, maybe think of a cocktail hour with a lot of,
highly intimidating if you ask me.
Yeah, a lot of the majority population in business in particular, it's very difficult for me. So I have the advantage when I network. I shouldn't say when I network. I have the advantage of having a strong network of former Kimberly-Clark colleagues. There are a lot of us former KCers in the area, and they have been generous and supportive to make referrals for me, and that's where many of my clients have come from.
Thank you for sharing that, Irene. I think it's such an important point to make too. It's hard to know like what part of your identity is going to make a difference for if you're going to be how you're going to experience the you know your surroundings and your interactions with the world. But thank you for speaking to that point. And then we did touch upon this a little bit earlier. Oh no, I jumped here. Sorry. How has your business grown or changed? So how long have you been around? Actually, I don't think I got that earlier. How long your consulting business has been around now?
Well, let's see, this is March. I actually opened my LLC at the end of March, so it's been almost exactly 12 years ago.
12 years. Well, congratulations.
2019, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
The first year was pretty slow.
Yeah. So how would you describe the change, like in terms of growth or change in, any type of offering, or it sounds like you've kind of created a niche for yourself. How has it grown and changed through these 12 years?
Yeah, thanks, Mia. That's always cause for great reflection. The first few years, my focus and my target were more corporate clients because they had, I mean, it's true, they have bigger pocketbooks.
Sure.
And there was also this aspect of, I came from the corporate world. I knew more about how they should be managing their product development and their innovation. And so I had more to offer to them. But, frankly, once my kids were through college and the house was paid off and, a lot of those financial obligations were taken care of, I could take a step back. The revenue, the income stream isn't as important as the satisfaction I get from helping people. And so that's why now my focus is on individual inventors, because a lot of the inventors that I've met, have a misunderstanding of the analysis they should go through in terms of what they do with their invention. They invent something and right away, a lot of them want to start making it and selling it to the world without considering if anybody wants to buy it and if anybody wants to pay enough to make it worth that inventor's while. So that business feasibility and analysis is so important. I have met inventors that think the first step is to go find a patent attorney and patent the thing. And that's an expensive step if you haven't figured out that you can make money from it.
Right. Wow. So this actually refers to Kimiata's question a few minutes ago. She was asking if you focus on consulting corporations, but it almost sounds like you started off with corporations and now work a lot more with just individuals, solopreneur, and innovators.
Yep, that's right. That's right. And so I'll just add that I was really fortunate early on that one of my first clients was it's actually the parent company of KT. For those of us who know small animal and bird supplies, wild bird seeds, things like that, KT. And that was a long-term contract. It was really great for me and hopefully great for them. But like I said, these days, in addition to inventors, I have the time and space and abilities to also contract with nonprofits. So that's a major shift in my business. That came about because I have continued to volunteer for actually many organizations. And so, a couple of them have said, well, you don't have to just volunteer. We'd love to have your services on a more ongoing basis. So that's how those contracts came about. Those are not, revenue streams that I actively sought out.
Sure.
Because nonprofits need volunteers. So
right. But that's a really important point you're making. I mean, the fact that you're getting your contracts mainly through word of mouth, that you're growing your own network, you're creating trust with organizations and individuals, and they can see, they can see the value you bring, and they want to contract with you on a professional level. I think it's really important to just bring that up because I think, something that we see in extension and research and on the ground is like the power of networks. It's actually like you can even measure in terms of like business success. Businesses that have more robust and larger networks, they are just doing better. And so you're really speaking to that, Irene, and you're talking about being in those spaces of educational settings, in nonprofit settings, kind of being a really focus on different settings and environments to interact with people. I think not that you're like seeking out to necessarily seek clients when you are volunteering, but I think just by showing, your value and what you could be bringing to the table, I think just in itself becomes this like PR for your business because you're doing consulting. So
that's
and
true.
Kimiata wanted to just say thank you so much for bringing personal obstacles versus people not being open to receive you. That's something people often overlook. Thank you, Kenyatta, for recognizing that.
Yes, thank you. And you know, again, you know, I have a lot of reasons for reflection these days, but I do more and more recognize the people that I'm comfortable with, you know, and and that helps me, you know, to be aware, where am I more comfortable, where am I less comfortable, because it takes more energy, right, to put myself out there if I'm not as comfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Now, this is a really big question, and I know we're getting close to the half hour here, but can you share any lessons learned being a small business owner, especially during a pandemic, during the COVID year, and obviously it's still going on? Anything that happened to you or that you had to change potentially during this time?
Well, of course, one of the big things is we've all learned to use Zoom.
Yep.
And I will have to say, you know, I still occasionally run across people that don't have that comfort level with Zoom, and it surprises me. So I have to recognize that the reason why I'm comfortable is because of all of the networks that I have. A lot of my learning and training, you know, with this remote connection platform, or various of them, are because of the volunteer work that I do. But you know, I'm able to then transition that to my business, and I am realizing that I need to, I mean, I still have a free account on Zoom. Thank you, Midday Women's Alliance. But I am at that point, I probably need to change that over to a paid subscription, just because it's not that I need it every month, but when I need it, you know, I should have that capability. So I think that's the biggest thing, you know, as we were saying earlier, these days, we're still able to connect. And so I'm still able to work with my clients through these video platforms. Not the same thing as being in person, but we've all been able to continue to function. So I have clients that are in Milwaukee. I hope I'm going to be able to meet them in person soon, like this summer. But we have to do what we have to do. So for me, that's been the biggest transition.
Yeah, I hear you on that, Irene. Color Bowl has done a numerous amount of networking events in the past, and that's been we did one virtual networking event, which was fine, but just not the same. Like you're saying, like to be able to create relationships, it's very hard to do that in the same manner when it's a new, an introduction. Like you're saying, if you already have that established relationship, it's much easier to maintain, but it is hard to kind of like, oh, meet and greet, you know? So, so what's on the horizon for you, Irene, and where do you see yourself and your business in 5 years?
Well, Mia, I meant to mention to you, that's the hardest question. If my business is still around in 5 years, then I can imagine me doing, you know, more and more for nonprofits. But if you had asked me that question, let's say 2-3 years ago, you know, pre-pandemic, pre any of some of the more recent changes, I would have said that this year was the year I was going to retire. So remember, I had a good career at Kimberly-Clark. In 5 years, I will be 68, and I hope I'm not working like this by then. I know, however, that I want to still stay involved. There are so many good community efforts going on, you know, whether it's to boost up the minority communities, that's why Color Bold is so important, or help the entrepreneurial community, help women in general. You know, this is where everything kind of comes together for me. There's so much work that needs to be done.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Irene. And you've gotten some shout outs here from actually a couple of nonprofits too, including us too, Behavioral Health in Appleton.
Oh,
Great interview, Irene. Thanks for all you do in the community.
that's
We've
Shang.
gotten quite a few hellos, and I know Rhonda Chandler is also running a nonprofit out of the Pier. So no, you've gotten quite a few hellos here. And
Yes.
I know we need to wrap it up, but let's see. Kim Yad is asking another good question. Let's ask it, because you know what? It's a good one. Since your business is strong through networking, what would you say is the top 3 to 5 things a person should do to build a strong network and stay connected with them? It's a good one.
Yes. Yes. Excellent question again, Kim Yada. Thank you. One of the pieces of advice I always give is very simple, but it's very deep. 3 simple words: follow your leads, which means, you know, when you meet someone and you find there's might be something of interest or something curious or something in common, you know, follow up and connect with that person. You never know where that might lead to. And what I've found is that it's almost always worth the time. It's an investment, you know, it might pay off the next month or it might be the next year, but absolutely follow your leads. That's probably the most important. And then I don't know that everybody can do this, but obviously I'm in a position where I can be very generous with my time, and that also has been able to pay off for me. I could not have done that, you know, if I were, as they put it, nose to the grindstone, always focused on my business. As we mentioned a few minutes ago, the volunteer work that I've been able to do has turned around and come back to, you know, help me in my client base. So I think that that's only 2 pieces of advice, but I hope both of them are valuable.
No, I love it. And I think it will ring true for a lot of business owners that are tuning in today. And anything else you would like to add on before we wrap it up today, Irene? I think it's been such a rich conversation. Is there anything you want to add? Any words of advice besides these beautiful networking, growing advice here, but anything else you can think of?
Especially for Colorbold and other organizations that I'm part of, especially the Women's Business Group, Midday Women's Alliance. I just believe very strongly in supporting each other. I think that's what these organizations are built around, helping each other achieve their potential, our potential. And, you know, so I try to live by the words, you know, that what I give will come back to me eventually. And so, you know, that mutual support is so important. And I think that's where it starts.
And I love that. And I had to put it in the chat box because I had to quote it here so everybody can see. What I give will come back to me. No, it's true. I think it's true, Irene. And I think, you know, all of the passion and all of the love you have for the community and for business owners and for women, for people of color. I think, I think it will come back not just to you, but to organizations like Colorbold, to the Midday Women's Alliance, and for all the groups that you're working with and with your business. So I'm just so thrilled you're on the Colorbold Core Committee leadership too, because you're bringing a lot to the table, just being there, being part of the meetings, providing your expertise. And again, your network is pretty remarkably robust. So you always know everyone, and it's for a good reason, Irene. And I'm just so glad that you're in this community and that we got to talk today.
Yes, thank you, Mia. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, as they say. But Mia, I just have to comment. It is so fortunate that you and I met last year before everything shut down.
We did. We did.
And that's an example of following my leads, you know, so.
You're right. We are a living example of that. You're right, Irene. You are right. We met in the co-working space that then existed in the basement of Fit Oshkosh, and we had this long conversation. And you were telling me about all these different people and networks and groups you were working with. I was just taking so many notes. I was like, I'm gonna have to follow up with Irene, and we did. So you're right. This is really a good testament of your own advice. So thanks so much, and thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm just so glad you all could be here, and we'll be back again next month with another business owner. If you're interested, if you know somebody in Northeast Wisconsin who would like to be featured, please let me know. Just put in the comment box or email me or message me, and I'll be sure to follow up. So thanks so much, and thank you, Irene, again.
All right, thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.